Hello everyone and welcome to the Film Examiner. I am Kingsley Martin and tonight we're going to review the film World War Z starring Brad Pitt, Mireille Enos, Fana Mokoena, directed by Marc Forster, written by Matthew Michael Carnahan, J. Michael Straczynski, Damon Lindelof, I hope I'm saying these names correctly, Lindelof, and really is more inspired by the novel written by Max Brooks, because if you've read the novel's different from the movie that they put together, although they're already talking sequels, and most likely when they make the sequel of this picture, they're probably going to try and get closer to the novel, at least bring in more aspects of the novel to it. So, let's talk about the story of this picture. It is your basic zombie apocalypse concept. A lot of it seems similar in ways at the beginning to 28 days later, 28 weeks later, because it's the whole concept of rabies, and these people have just lost their minds and are, have died, but they won't stop coming back. It's very much a mixture of, a zombie apocalypse and 28 Days Later, which I suppose was supposed to be a zombie film, but in a lot of ways it just seems like, rabies sort of broke loose, and the same thing sort of happened with, was it Legend? Is that the one? No, not Legend. It was I Am Legend with Will Smith. So it's very much a similar concept, a zombie apocalypse. So a disease breaks out, it, kills people, destroys them, and they go crazy and start attacking everyone else, and it's a spreading virus that has spread throughout the world. There are some very big differences in the way they address this issue, though, in this picture, which is what makes World War Z stand out among all the other zombie films. I mean, you have, just going back to the basics of zombie films, you have, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Living Dead, and what else is there? Return of the Living Dead, The Walking Dead, one of the most popular television shows out there right now. Even Game of Thrones is semi-zombie oriented. And then you go on to just all these different kinds of, movies like I've already talked about, 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, Shaun of the Dead. I mean, just all these sort of things. There's humor in this film as well, but it's not as blatant at times. There's some really funny moments, though. At least to me, there were some very funny moments mixed in with the, the suspense and the horror aspect, which is really important because you can't keep people for 2 hours, which is how long this movie is. Although I wouldn't say it felt it. You can't keep people 2 hours watching a movie without having some aspects of humor in it, and they did a really good job of that. Can you tell I liked it? Not my favorite movie of all time, but I definitely think for what it was, it did a really good job. So, essentially, Brad Pitt is this family man who's a former, and I'm sure they define this in ways I didn't quite catch, but he's basically a military operative who's been sent in to deal with, very difficult situations. And he's really gotten out of the line of duty because he wants to spend more time with his family. Just when you thought you were out, they suck you back in. And this outbreak occurs, basically. Rabies, zombies, whatever you want to call it. Let's just call it zombies because Z stands for zombie. And so he and his family are trying to escape it, but the people who know of him and his efforts in the past basically say, we need your help, and they help him get his family to a quote-unquote safe zone. But then they tell him, we have limited space, the government's been destroyed, the key leaders of the government have been, wiped out, and now it's just a small group of people related to the UN that are trying to sort of make sense and find a resolution to this issue. And because of his experience, they rescue him and his family, bring them to this, like I said, quote-unquote safe zone, and then they say, we need your help, and if you don't help us, then, you can get out because we have limited bed space, and, these need to be utilized for people who are serving a purpose. So he sets out on this mission, this international mission, to try and learn aspects of what's going on, where it started, what were the warning signs, can we find a solution. And I won't give you too much more of that. One of the things I really think is interesting about this story is it is very much an international story. It's not just, we're all in, you know, Atlanta, Georgia, or in, you know, America dealing with it. This is very global, and I like that aspect of this because it does not. It makes you realize the world is a huge place, and all these struggles that are going on are not just here at home. And I think in a way that makes it superior to a lot of zombie pictures, because while we do need the intimate encounters, basically, of, you know, being able to connect to characters, we also need to realize that if a zombie apocalypse breaks out, it's not just here, it's all over the world. It's not limited to America just because we watch too much TV. So in that way, this movie is very strong because it does show you the whole global impact of this outbreak. So that's really strong. I really like that aspect of this picture. And it starts off very similar to me in a lot of ways to 28 days later and 28 weeks later. Very similar to that in a lot of ways because of the rabies concept. And at first I thought, oh man, we're just really telling the story of 28 days later with, you know, a bigger budget and all that. And then Brad Pitt, because, you know, Brad Pitt's such a quality actor, and we're just going to use him to, you know, make another zombie flick. But they transitioned this film into a very interesting approach to addressing the zombie apocalypse. I don't want to give spoilers away because I think it would ruin it, but needless to say that they find what could be a solution, but it's a very bizarre and very deadly solution, and a dangerous solution. And it's very, this is a thinking film in a lot of ways, despite what you think with zombies and being wild and crazy, and it is that too, but it also has a lot of, you know, mental aspects to it, like, you know, thought aspects to it that make it very strong, because you do have to think about certain elements of the way they do it. And as a result of it, it stands out in the end. It makes a turn and becomes a film where you can really see that there was logic put behind it. I have not read the novel by Max Brooks, but I am inspired to read the novel based on seeing this, to see if the book that this movie was based on possesses some of those qualities. Because as I understand, the character of Jerry Lane is not actually in the novel. He's a, you know, made up character specifically for this movie. So I'm interested in reading the book because of that. So the story it starts off as a, you know, basic zombie apocalypse, but quickly, or not quickly, but at the midpoint, you start seeing this shift to how they approach the apocalypse and the impact different. And once again, it is a stronger story in the sense because it is more global and it's not just your backyard. And, you know, here in America and we're dealing with it, which is one of the things that I dislike about most zombie pictures, is that it's not global. And definitely when you have Brad Pitt in a, you know, a multi-$100 million budget, you can definitely get more global. So that's very strong. Let's talk about characters. Brad Pitt's really probably the strongest character in this picture. Fana Mokoena. I really hope I'm Fana Mokoena. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I think he's Nigerian. And a lot of the actors are not bad, but there's so much action going on that it's, as far as distinctive characters are concerned, I would definitely say that Brad Pitt's character and Theory are probably the most defined characters. Brad Pitt, Jerry Lane, and in Theory, I think that's, I know people are going to tell me I'm wrong in the comments if I've got this wrong, but I think Theory is played by Fana Mokoena, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing the man's name. Good actor. So anyway, so character-wise, there's not a lot of, you know, major characters defined, and mostly it's Brad Pitt and his family. And I wasn't and as much as I do think Mireille Enos is a fairly good actor, I don't think they gave her enough to work with in this. Let me say that about the story. I don't think they gave her enough to work with in this where she really shined. I think she just was, you know, the angry wife or the distraught wife. Although she really wasn't as much distraught, she was trying to keep it together in a lot of ways. And almost to the point of where it was almost a little bit unbelievable the way she was trying to keep things together. Whereas, you know, women do tend to be emotional in the situation when they're protective of their children, and then she's dealing with the stress of the fact that her husband is, you know, off somewhere else in the world. He's, you know, so in ways, you really don't, I didn't feel like they really made her come across completely realistic. So that was a little bit of a fail for me. But but when you're dealing with something of this huge, enormous sort of, size and effort, I think it's easy to get lost on characters. It's definitely an action picture. Definitely an action picture. Definitely not Rain Man. Definitely, so it's most certainly an action picture, and so because of that, I think characters get lost a little bit in it because as a result of it, definitely Brad Pitt's character is a little more fleshed out than other characters. And as far as performance is concerned, I definitely think you remember Theory character, because he's an interesting presence as a performer. So that's kind of character. And then let's talk about direction. The gentleman who directed this, Marc Forster, has directed a lot of. He's directed Stranger Than Fiction. He's directed a lot of pictures. Why are the other ones escaping my mind? He's directed a lot of pictures, though, and a lot of them are very strong pictures. He's got a good sense of directing. This guy knows what he's doing behind the helm of a film. He knows how to get a shot. He knows how to, bring in a story and keep you involved in it from a directorial standpoint. Now, this is a very big action picture, so it's not as character driven. It's more circumstantial driven, and that sort of thing. It's not character driven as much. So you have to have a director who knows how to still hopefully get across some kind of character story and at the same time portray action. And he does, I think, accomplish that fairly well in the picture. Soundtrack, or cinematography, the cinematographer definitely knew what he was doing. Marc Forster hired a good cinematographer to help shoot his picture. Visually speaking, it's definitely very dark in so many ways, but I do think it pulls off for what it is. It's an action picture. Not anything, that I think is going to go down in the annals of, not to be confused with the annals of film history, though. I definitely think it's strong. He knows what he's doing with the camera, let's put it that way, and he knows how to get a shot, and knows how to frame it, and bring the greatest impact from the shot. So cinematography's done really well. The sound, costuming, and makeup is done. It has to be done well in this kind of a picture, and I can't get past a moment in the end that I want to tell you, but where Brad Pitt encounters this zombie character at the end, and face to face with a zombie, and the makeup and the whole thing just looked outstanding in the picture. One of my favorite moments in the whole movie is this, and I laughed at it, but it wasn't because it was bad. It was because it was funny in the way it was portrayed. But pretty interesting to watch. So the makeup and basically you just have to come across military uniforms, make it look real, make it look authentic, and I definitely think they pulled it off with the makeup and the wardrobe in the picture. The music is really nothing. I mean, it goes along with an action film. It's not any more outstanding than anything else. You know what I mean? It's not definitive to where you go, hey, that's the music from that. Whereas I think in like Dracula, you can the old Francis Ford Coppola Dracula. I think you can definitely sort of tell it's the Dracula music. Whereas in this one, I think it's just sort of it's that kind of music. It's just sort of, it's formulaic, but it fits the mood. One of the things I always think is that if there's an overabuse of music, it means that you can't pull across the suspense aspect of it without music. So I'm not as big of a fan of the overuse of music. I think it makes more of an impact when it's not overused and you use it when you need to. And there's definitely a pretty consistent soundtrack following most of this picture. So that's really my perspective on that. All other elements, I think, pulled together pretty well on the picture. I really do think they pulled most of their elements pretty solidly together. The story, to me, is, considering what we're dealing with and the abundance of zombie-oriented films and product out there right now, the story is really where this picture wins in a lot of ways. Because it starts off like your normal zombie apocalypse type of film, but very, fast-paced and quick. And then as they move further into the picture, it's my ice maker. Scared the hell out of me though. But as they move into the picture, about halfway into the picture, they definitely show you that they've got a different approach to addressing it. In addition to the fact that they go global, they don't stay, in a small confined space and deal with it. So definitely, it's more active. They take more of they're more proactive in trying to resolve the issue and find resolutions, whereas everybody else is just trying to survive. They're not necessarily trying to understand it, but they're trying to survive. And part of what makes this movie stand out is because this story stand out is that they're trying to make it survive. So the writing is done really well. That would go back really to the writers, the original story by Max Brooks, and then the writing done by Matthew Michael Carnahan, J. Michael Straczynski, Damon Lindelof. They definitely contributed a lot. Damon Lindelof worked on Lost a lot, by the way. So this guy knows how to create suspense. And the other two are, and there's other writers, but the other two that I mentioned, they're actually fairly young writers. They've only done like 3 or 4 things as writers and produced some other projects. But you can definitely tell that there's their hand in it, and as well as Damon Lindelof's hand in it. And he's a very good writer. And he's a creator. I think he created Lost. I can't remember, but I think he created Lost. But he did a good job. He's a good writer overall, no matter what. He's a great contributor to the piece. So this story, if I'm going to, in the whole scheme of zombie movies, rate the story on this picture, I definitely give this a 4.5. Stronger than a lot of them. Stronger than a lot of them, so 4.5. The characters in the picture, like I said, Jerry's really the only one who's defined, and outside of that, the performance by Fana, really hope I'm saying that person's name right, Fana Mokoena, definitely very strong. So, liked Fana Mokoena. I probably should stop saying that because I'm probably messing it up horribly. But those are the two people who really stand out in the picture to me as far as characters are concerned. So I definitely like those two. But as far as everybody else is concerned, I don't really think there's a lot of character definition in the picture. And as a result of that, I'm going to have to give the character definition in this picture really more of a 3.25 is more appropriate. Direction, another very strong aspect of this picture. I do think he could have gone a little bit further in trying to create moods a little bit different, but this is just a dark movie in general with a little bit of light suggestiveness in certain parts of it. And so as a result of it, I would say the direction's strong. Not great as it could be, but definitely very strong for the nature of this kind of picture. So I give it a 4. The cinematography, pretty much the same. The guy knew what he was doing, or the cinematographer, whether it was a man or woman, but definitely knew what they were doing, knew how to frame shots, create, eye-popping moments. So, very strong. Great and amazing, no, but definitely knew what they were doing. So I'm going to put them a 3.75 on that. Sound, or wardrobe and makeup, very strong. Wardrobe and makeup, very, very strong on wardrobe and makeup. Sometimes you don't need it to be definitive, you just need it to be authentic looking, and that's what they accomplished. So I definitely give it 4.25 for wardrobe and makeup on the picture. And lastly, sound and music. I do think music is overused, and I don't think it's definitive. So it's not bad, but it's a little bit abused as far as its overusage and such. So I'm not really as big a fan of this soundtrack of this picture, because it doesn't make me want to go out and buy the soundtrack just so I can hear the music in the background, because it's so suspenseful and powerful. It's fairly formulaic. So the music is definitely in the, I'm going to say, 3.25 range. So really, when you put all that together, I think this movie probably falls in about the 3.5 to 3.75 range. Now, I know that sounds a little low, but if you know how I rated other zombie pictures, I would definitely, this is probably more like a 3.75 to 4. Because it is definitely better than average, and very strong. In the scheme of just zombie pictures, I think it would rank higher than a lot of them. But if I'm ranking it, which is what I do, rank movies among the spectrum of movies in general, I would definitely give this a 3.75 to 4. Definitely leaning probably closer to a 4. And I didn't think I was going to like it when I went in. And it really, like I told you, it was a lot like 28 Days Later when I first got into it. But as it evolved as a story, you start seeing that it's global, and you start seeing that their approach, they're taking a more proactive approach to addressing the issue versus just surviving. And that's one of the things I really, really liked about it. So Definitely 3.75 to 4, leaning more towards the 4 for World War Z, starring Brad Pitt, Mireille Enos, Fana Mokoena, directed by Marc Forster, based on the novel by Max Brooks. So that is my review. Definitely not an autopsy, even though this is a zombie picture, right? Definitely a quality examination and appreciative for what they gave me at the theater. Definitely one of the best movies I've seen in the last month as far as movies I've seen at the theater. That and Monsters University, so you can check out that review on this channel as well. So thanks so much for watching The Film Examiner. I am Kingsley, and I will see you next time. Have a good day.